Fresh off a loss to the Seattle Kraken, the Boston Bruins will be hosting the Toronto Maple Leafs on Saturday evening at TD Garden, a game that will be featured on Hockey Night in Canada. And to tee that one up, I'm going to be joined by an old friend from the Score Days, Arun Srinivasan, who is going to help preview it. So let's get into that on today's special bonus episode of Locked On Boston Bruins.
You're Locked On Bruins, your daily podcast on the Boston Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Arun, what's going on, my friend? How's it going?
It's going well, Ian. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, no problem. I was looking back, and I think it was like 2019 when you were on the podcast before. So for those who don't remember, Arun and I, we worked at the Score together in Toronto, sometimes working hockey together. Arun was mostly football then, but now Arun covering hockey from Toronto for Yahoo Sports, also working on a book about racism in hockey that we can touch on near the end. But to start, Arun, just your overall impressions so far of the Atlantic Division. Has it been shaping up kind of how you expected it to up to this point, halfway point of the season? And any surprises in the Atlantic from your perspective?
I mean, man, what a vaunted division. I mean, here we go again. I mean, yeah, I mean, I don't think I was in the camp of people who was speaking on the Bruins' demise prematurely, but right. I don't think they would be this dominant 41 games into the season. So I guess they are sort of, in some ways, the objective sort of pleasant surprise of the season. The Atlantic Division is so tough. I think, when you have Toronto playing as well, you have Tampa playing as well. Mm-hmm. They're going to be in variable complaints about the playoff format. I do think, as someone who covers Maple Leafs and have been sort of raised in Maple Leafs fandom, that while these criticisms are legitimate of the playoff format, they sort of ring hollow when it's only coming from the Maple Leafs fan base. So, you have to beat your opponent in front of you, which this Maple Leafs group has failed to do so in 6 consecutive years. Have there been any real surprises? No, not necessarily. I do think the bottom of the division sort of played out the way you would think it was. I thought Detroit would be a little bit better. Mm-hmm. But I will say that, this being a Bruins podcast, the Leafs have played really well. And I think were it not for the Bruins just having this absolutely incredible start to the year, it sort of obscured how well the Leafs have played. Mm-hmm. Because every time you look at the top of the standings, the Bruins are up 8-9 points. And counting. I mean, the Leafs and the Bruins both lost last night. From the Leafs' perspective, a key opportunity to gain some ground. But yeah, the Atlantic Division is as good as ever, and that should frighten some teams. I think Boston, Toronto, and Tampa will be really battle tested come playoff time. But man, year in, year out, it's the toughest division in the league by far.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, yeah, I've said countless times on the podcast that I expected the Bruins to be okay to start the season without Marchand and McAvoy, but to be this ahead of Toronto in the Atlantic, they're 9 points up, and Boston has 2 games in hand, which is wild, and the plus 65 goal differential for Boston compared to Toronto's plus 31, which is just insane as well. Just looking at the standings, interesting to see that, say, based on the old 1-8 format, points-wise, Boston would be set up to play Pittsburgh in the first round, and Toronto would indeed be matched up against Tampa as the 3-6 matchup right now, which is interesting. So, I mean, point percentage changes that a little bit. I think Tampa's ahead of the Rangers, but still wild to think about how, finish second in the Atlantic, and you still might have to play the reigning Eastern Conference champions, which would be a tough road. One thing that's impressed me about Toronto so far this year is their defense. They're a much improved defensive team. allowing, I think, the third or top 5 fewest goals. What's changed about this team defensively this season compared to past years, perhaps? Or is that
I
just a
mean,
perception that they're
no,
bad defensively?
no. I mean, yeah, that perception is completely outdated now, and I think there are a few different components. I mean, I think we have to start with Mark Giordano. He's been so good for this team. Um, you look at his underlying possession numbers; they're good. They're not, Adam Fox level or anything, or Charlie McAvoy
Right.
level, but they're good enough where he's on the ice. You can put him in defensive zone faceoffs, and he's going to make the right play every time. I think his presence has really encouraged the growth of Justin Hall. I mean, Hall, Giordano have played the most minutes at 5-5 for the Leafs this year by far, and they probably will remain intact with TJ Brody out of the lineup. I mean, Giordano for 39 years old. I mean, he's not just playing well for his age; he's playing great. Period. He is like a borderline. If this All-Star format made any sense, he'd be a borderline All-Star. But I think his sort of reliability has just allowed Justin Hall to play his game. I mean, you watch Justin Hall. This guy takes off. He jumps in the rush a ton. He often wants to operate as a fourth forward, especially when he's paired with the Leafs top 6. He can sort of sense sort of that aggressiveness from the Leafs forwards and wants to jump in. And Giordano has just sort of allowed him to play his game naturally without overthinking. I mean, Justin Hall had a brutal start to the year, and man, the Leafs fans let him have it. And it was really rough. But I think, he's playing some of the best hockey of his career now with Giordano there as a safety valve. The second component is that in probably easier point is that there's been a lot of internal development from Rasmus Sandin and Timothy Liljegren, particularly from Rasmus Sandin. It's too bad he suffered a neck injury in December, which sort of took him out of his rhythm a little bit because he was really impressing in all situations. I asked Sheldon Keefe about this in December, and it seemed clear from Sheldon's response that, Rasmus has earned the trust of Sheldon in all situations. You can put him on the penalty kill. He sort of can operate as a power play quarterback. It's not necessarily his most natural role, but he sort of has the skill set to shoot through traffic, sees lanes. He's making really clean, zone exits too. And for a guy who is on paper undersized financial defenseman, he's not scared to lay the body or win pucks in the corner. He's been great. I think the game is really slowing down for him. For Timothy Liljegren, I'm not as willing to say the game is slowing down for him, but he's been a lot more solid. There's been a lot less variance with his play. There'll be some nights where Timothy Liljegren, like, of course, he's got, plus size. He's got plus skating for an NHL defenseman. You look at this guy sometimes, and last year, and you're like, this guy could be the best defenseman on the team. And then the next night, he's the worst player on the ice by far. There's been far less variance in this game. It's been a lot more solid. So those two having some internal development there has gone a long way to, for a team that's been without Morgan Riley and will be without Jake Muzzin for the foreseeable future. I mean, look, without playing doctor, I'm certainly not qualified to do so. I wouldn't sort of plan for this Leafs team with Muzzin being a part of that core group anymore. And it's unfortunate. It's an unfortunate reality of this game, right? You put your body on the line for this team time and again. But yeah, I mean, Mark Giordano has been a godsend because he too, like, he's such a steady leader in that room. And then for Rasmus Sandin and Timothy Liljegren to show the internal development you want from both these guys are former first round picks, and I think they're past the age where you could look at them as, well, they're young and promising. We'll see. Like, this is the year for them to show something, and they have. So that's been great to see.
And grabbing Connor Timmins from Arizona certainly helped too. They have the luxury of, I think he's got like 10 points in 15 games or something like that. Actually snagged him in my keeper fantasy league. So that's been a nice addition, but haven't been able to play him as much lately because he's been scratched, which is a nice luxury for Toronto to have.
Yep.
I want to talk about the goaltending situation, Auston Matthews, but have to take a quick break here. So be right back with Arun. First, a quick word about BetOnline. Sponsor today. They're your number one source for sports betting info, stats, news, analysis. Get all the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there. NFL playoffs coming up this weekend. I know Arun is going to be very tuned in to the Buffalo Bills, and you can place all your bets for NFL action at BetOnline. So fast, so easy. Head to their website today. Use your mobile device to learn more. That's BetOnline, where the game starts. Side note, Arun, how confident are you in the Bills beating Miami this weekend?
Very confident, like
Yes.
dangerously confident, but confident in that zone where it never feels like comfortable. Like,
Yeah.
it can only, be bad. Like, we, God, I mean, you hate to assume that you have sort of like the win in hand, but yeah, I'm very confident in this Bills team to beat Miami because Tua Tagovailoa is not playing. Totally
Right.
different equation if he's in, but I think just the drop off between him and Skylar
Mhm.
Thompson is noticeable.
Yeah.
So yes, I'm a massive Bills fan. Go Bills! Hopefully it's their year.
Yep. A lot of Ontario people are Bills fans just because of the. I know for me growing up, that was the only game that was on TV on Sunday afternoons was Bills game, so I was pretty plugged in back then, anyways. I want to talk about the goaltending. That was a big story heading into the season. Toronto kind of revamping their goaltending situation, bringing in Matt Murray, Ilya Samsonov. Both guys have been a bit up and down and a bit injured, but their numbers are pretty strong. I think it was Samsonov who played the other night in the loss to Detroit. I'm expecting Matt Murray will start against Boston. Is that a fair assumption? And either way, what's been behind those two guys having a bit of a resurgence personally for the Leafs this season?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a fair assumption to assume that Matt Murray will get the start on Saturday against the Bruins. I mean, Sheldon Keefe hasn't really designated a de facto number one, but it does seem to be leaning towards Murray having that number one role. And, if we're talking about playoff time, I think he would probably be the starter. Yeah, I mean, the factor for the resurgence for both these guys, I don't know necessarily. I think playing in front of a better defense certainly helps, but they both been good. I mean, I think, I didn't see the vision when the Leafs acquired Murray or Samsonov. I was very much part of the sarcastic crew. It was like, Kyle Dubas does is acquire former Sioux Greyhounds. And for Samsonov, I didn't see it. I was just like, I didn't really take the glass half full approach with him, which should have been obvious. Where you have like this, I mean, both these guys are gigantic. And Samsonov, he moves so well laterally, like his physical tools are off the charts. So my whole thing was like, if he's so big and he's so athletic, like why couldn't he get the job done with Washington? They gave him. I mean, look, the Capitals gave him every chance to be number one after Braden Holtby. It's not like he didn't get a fair shot, and he did. And to me, I had a lot of trepidation about both of them. But wow, I mean, yeah, Matt Murray's been great consistently throughout the year. This last month, they have faced some steep regression, but I'm not altogether worried about it. I think alarm bells go off for Maple Leafs fans because they see what happened with Jack Campbell last year, where he was arguably a top 5 goalie in the league until New Year's Day, and then his form fell off a cliff. And it's unfortunate to see that he hasn't, regained some of that early 2021 form with the Oilers this year. But yeah, I mean, look, if they say the cliche is that you want your goalie to give you a chance to win every night, and Matt Murray and Ilya Samsonov have done that in spades, especially during those initial days of Morgan Rielly going down when there was a lot of uncertainty around how this young defense would respond and what the pairings were like, and no one really anticipated, nor would it be fair to anticipate 39-year-old Mark Giordano playing this great and sort of uplifting the rest of the team. So that's been really good. I think to me, I just think, for Samsonov, he's just seeing the puck a lot better. Like he's not fighting the puck anymore. For Murray, I mean, there's nights where he looks lights out. He can be inconsistent. The last game I covered in person was against the Kraken last week, where Matt Murray was awful, and there's no way around that. But by my books, it's only really his third bad start of the year. So they've been really good for the Leafs. They've been, making key saves. Granted, Leafs defense has not really put them out to dry this year, which is nice to see. But yeah, I mean, a fresh start really helps. I think in Samsonov's case, he needed that fresh start a lot more. Matt Murray, I can't necessarily figure it out. He's always been sort of prone to these like highs and lows, so I think that's just sort of it. With Samsonov, I really just think it was change of scenery, change of organization. The organization had written him off. The fan base was just like had written him off. But Yeah, I mean, look, we never really know with goaltending, right? I mean, look at the
Yeah.
Bruins with Linus Ullmark. I mean,
Yeah.
any team in the NHL could have had him, and now he's going to win the Vezina Trophy.
Yeah.
So, I mean, goaltending is such a variable. Like, unless you are Andre Vasilevsky or Igor Shesterkin, like, good luck
Yeah.
trying to figure it out. So,
Totally.
I know that's not maybe the clever answer that you wanted or expected, but truthfully, I think it's changed the scenery for Samsonov, for Murray. I don't know what it is. Um, I just think I would have to probably attribute it to the Leafs defense being better than the previous teams.
Mhm.
But again, man, Ian, I don't know. Like, I mean, I guess flipping it back on you, right? Like, how many of us knew that Linus Ullmark was going to be
Yeah.
good, right? Like, he's been
Yeah.
phenomenal this year. I have to put in my vote for midseason awards, and he's getting my Vezina Trophy vote this year. I never
Yeah.
thought in a million years that'd be the case.
Yeah, I mean, he has exceeded all expectations. I thought he would be a pretty good signing
Mhm.
last year. I talked a lot about how he kind of stumbled out of the gates, like a new city, new system, uprooting your family, all that. It takes a while to get into things, but yeah, he's certainly exceeded. We often see it, right, where Vesna, Jack Adams kind of go hand in hand. Um, Jim Montgomery's been good for Linus Ullmark. Linus Ullmark's been good for Jim Montgomery.
Yep.
He did lose Thursday, so I'm not sure if they might go with Swayman against the Leafs because he's been playing pretty well
Yeah.
lately too. So that'll be interesting to see what the matchup is. One guy who may or may not be testing Boston's goaltending is Auston Matthews. He's been out of the lineup the last couple of days with mystery ailment that's nagging him. I think he's on a 38 goal pace, which is very good, but not the 60 goals he scored last year. What's up with Auston Matthews? Why is he not scoring at the rate that he did last season?
I think it's just honestly just a matter of just like shooting regression. Like, if you just look at a cursory look at natural stat trick, he's third in individual expected goals. He's like one of the best faceoff men in the league. His two-way attention to detail has been excellent. Like, this has been his best defensive year of his career
Right.
by far, I think, and I think that's mattered a lot. I mean, yeah, like I said this on Fan 590 a few weeks ago. It's like the goal scoring explosion for Auston Matthews seems to be coming. Like, if you just look at sort of any like graph and stuff, there's he hasn't played poorly. He's played really well. Has he played like a Hart Trophy candidate? No, he's not going to win the Hart Trophy this year, but he's played really well in all facets of his game. Like, there's been nothing really noticeably different. I think last year a lot of the Leafs offense was tailored to Auston Matthews, where they would try to get him into that patented top of the face-off circle and just rich a laser past goalies. He still got that, but I think the Leafs offense, the way they sort of entered zones, a little different too. I mean, William Nylander's having such a fantastic year that he's often driving that line too, and Matthews just waiting there.
Yeah, he's been unreal.
There's we talk about this. I use this as a clutch old time in a lot of sports, but in the NBA, Steph Curry has a thing called the gravity effect, right? Where basically he's such the focus of the defense that it creates opportunities for other players. You're seeing that with Matthews, and like, not to say that William Nylander hasn't been great independently, but like when the defense has to account for Auston Matthews at all time, well, of course William Nylander is going to just take every opportunity and run with that. So Matthews, he's been great this year. He's been really good. Whether that injury has hampered his production a bit, again, I'm no doctor and nor am I going to pretend to, but this being my first year with consistent access to the team, I haven't seen anything to indicate that, there's this ailment that, holding Auston Matthews back. I do think if you look at his raw numbers and you see a 38 goal pace and probably an 80 point pace, you seem to think, well, this must be disappointment, but that really hasn't been the view from the Leafs room. That's certainly not the message that's being emanated from the Maple Leafs dressing room or his teammates or from Matthews himself, who just looks doubted and confident. So I don't know. I mean, I would account for a major goal scoring, explosion for Matthews, but yeah, I would worry sometimes, and then look at natural stat trick and realize like he's doing just fine. It's just a matter of time. And again, man, like the other facets of his game have never been better. Like, he's winning puck battles, he's winning faceoffs. You can put him in defensive zone faceoff with a lead, with a pull up, and he's not gonna, you can feel comfortable with him out there. So he's doing a lot of good things, man. The pucks might not be finding the net like they were last year. He's not gonna win the Hart Trophy this year. We can safely say that. And then there's one other part of it too, much in the same sense, like sort of analogous to the Bruins playing so well that's obscured how well the Leafs have played. Like Mitch Marner playing so well is sort of obscured how well the rest of the Maple Leafs have played. Him getting the franchise record point streak and have now tying the franchise record home streak. The story rightfully has been Marner all the time.
Right.
And I think that has sort of obscured how well Auston Matthews played as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. Before I let you go, I wanted to touch on some of your other work. Reminded me that last time Boston-Toronto played the season, it was a 2-1 win for the Maple Leafs in Toronto. And that game was, I don't want to say clouded, but came the day after the Bruins signed Mitchell Miller. And I know you're currently working on a book about racism in hockey, some of those issues. I wanted to get your take on kind of that whole situation, how the Bruins handled it subsequently, and kind of what it meant for the overall, hockey is for everyone kind of philosophy. Some quick thoughts on that whole situation.
God, I mean, where to start? I would say that the dissonance between the way the Bruins players handled it and the way the Bruins organization handled it couldn't have been sort of more starkly contrast. I mean, not that anyone should win like praise in situations like this, but Patrice Bergeron handled it as well as possible, I thought.
Yeah.
Which is just in such stark contrast to the way the Bruins organization handled it. I think them saying that, we didn't know of these facts or we didn't do our due diligence on Mitchell Miller is do you not have a working internet connection in your front office?
Exactly.
Like, I don't understand that. As for NHL, I've been deeply critical of them as a league and the way they've handled it. I don't think they did enough. I don't think they acted swiftly enough. Much in the same case with Logan Mailloux for the Habs. Like they haven't acted swiftly enough. This hockey for everyone moniker is just that. You look at other people who've tried to work with NHL earnestly in these EDI space. You look at Akeem Alou with the Hockey Diversity Alliance. He's rightfully criticized the NHL, saying they rejected the list of demands that they put out for tangible partnership, and that's just been glossed over by the NHL. And look, Kim Davis is failing at her job. Let's call it what it is. She's getting celebrated in the hockey news and other organizations, and people want to parrot Kim as this beacon of inclusion and diversity. Kim Davis was a former investment banker before she was in the NHL. Let's not kid ourselves here. When I interviewed Kim in 2019 for a story, title Hockey is not for everyone, a sort of a play on words with hockey is for everyone. Kim gave me this answer that basically amounted to, well, you can't expect the NHL to progress at a faster rate than society generally, which I thought was just like deeply uninspiring. Is Kim failing at her job because the NHL hasn't given enough resources to work with? That's very well possible. But, the league hasn't really been proactive in fighting racism. They just hope the news cycle dies out. I think when there have been groups that genuinely care to work with them, they've really ignored it. I think where the NHL may have done well, I think they're probably doing better with gay rights and trans rights a little bit.
Yep.
But that seems to be on a team-by-team basis. Like you look this week, one of my colleagues at Yahoo Sports, Ian Kennedy, wrote the story yesterday on how the Senators are inviting Jordan Peterson to the night. It's just like, the rate of racist incidents that happen in the NHL are alarming to keep up with. Like, it is technically my job to do so. Well, it is my job for the purpose of this book. And I got to tell you, man, like writing the chapters on the modern era of racism, it's like some of the stuff becomes outdated really quickly,
Yeah.
I don't know. I would like the NHL to sort of enact sort of stricter policies when it comes to racism and signing players that have committed acts of racism or sexual assault in their past, and also be cognizant of the own policies they have in place.
Right.
I think oftentimes the messaging comes to the NHL, they say hockey is for everyone, and the way they present it, it seems like they had just stumbled upon the memo themselves. So I think there needs to be better organization from
for sure,
league-wide. I think instead of just blindly celebrating Kim Davis for being this beacon of inclusion, I think journalists need to do a better job of interrogating her record in this space too. Because Kim is she's well-spoken and, she's, extremely well-educated and smart. But she has that sort of the politician's ability to evade pressure and sort of evade questions about policy or evade questions
Mhm.
about next steps. It's always about sort of, barometers in society. And, she hits the buzzwords really nicely. But
Mhm.
so I think the league needs to do a lot better job. I think certain teams are doing a better job. You can point to, the Seattle Kraken, and from the
Yep.
outset they've had emphasis on diversity and inclusion in a real way. I mean, it
Mhm.
all the way up from their hiring practices. So getting a sort of an assessment of the league is, I mean, my opinion on the league hasn't changed. How it's dealt with anti-racism, and again with the Bruins, again to me, like, the response between Patrice Bergeron and the response between
Yeah.
just couldn't have been more different.
Yep.
So, credit to Patrice Bergeron for being a good guy and handling it as best as he possibly could have. I think, you know what? I retract what I said earlier. I think he deserves a little bit of praise for just the way he handled a really tough situation, because
Yeah.
clearly he did not sign off on it, nor did the rest
No.
of the
Yeah.
players, right? Like,
Yeah.
all the players basically were like, "What the hell is this?"
Mhm.
So, yeah, man, it's an ongoing struggle. Racism just doesn't die when the news cycle dies, and
Yep.
I have to give a lot of credit to other journalists in the space, like Rick Westhead, Ian Kendi, and Katie Strang, who are
Yeah.
doing a
For
better job
sure.
than I am at covering this intersection. It can be tough, and so yeah, man, I know it's a long-winded answer, but it's tough to get sort of a static opinion of the league. But
Mhm.
certain teams are doing it better than others, and let's hope that the Mitchell Miller incident and the Logan Mayo incident before it, to say nothing of the concurrent Hockey Canada scandals,
Yes.
hopefully that teaches us all to be a little bit more diligent. At least as journalists, man. Like the
For sure.
fans, I know this is probably a stupid thing to say, but I don't think the onus really is on the fans. If they want to, great.
Mhm.
We're all here to wait for it. But for journalists, like, it baffles me how many journalists don't take the anti-racism
Yeah.
lessons that we all learned in society 3 years ago seriously in their work.
Mhm.
I didn't get this book deal because I'm like this great social theorist, and you know that. You know me from NFL days on the desk. I'm just one of the guys. But the reason why I have a book deal is not because I'm this great writer or anything, because I'm one of the few people who actually like wanted to report on this intersection, and
Right. Right.
that's
Right.
really what it is. So, I'm flattered when people tell me I'm a good writer and this, and that's nice, but it truly is because I was one of the few people who actually bothered to take the stuff we all said we were going to seriously 4 years ago.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
I think that's where we're at, and it's got to keep. We got to keep pushing forward, man. We got to keep
Mhm.
challenge people in power. And I think just sort of finally on this, I think what we could all do better as journalists is look at the linkage between policies in society and policies in our league. I think when Angel puts out the report, there's a lot of shock, like, wow, we couldn't believe this thing was racist.
Right.
You know, I go to these anti-racism conferences in Toronto, and then they start the conference with a message read from John Tory, who made life the most scariest thing worse for Black and Indigenous people in this.
Right.
So I think there
Yeah.
has to be sort of this, a greater examination of how these things are all sort of interconnected,
Mhm.
right?
Yep.
But yeah, sorry for the long-winded answer on that. I could
No. No. Don't apologize. Well, Arun, you do great work. You do important work, and it's important to keep these conversations going, even when we're excited about individual teams and games. Remind people where they can find where your work, where they can find you on Twitter.
Yeah, so my Twitter is at Arun Things. You can find the vast majority of my work at Yahoo Sports Canada, although I should be working with a few other outlets this year.
Very nice. Very nice.
Otherwise, yeah, I mean, you can follow me on Instagram if you want. I usually post some of my work there, but truthfully, it's me just sort of posting my life in the city. And then that's about it, really. I took this week off just to have fun, but including this podcast, man. Thank you so much for having me. But
No,
next week,
thanks for doing it.
I'm going to be back and hitting the ground running, and hopefully, I can have some more concrete updates about my work in the sort of racism and hockey space.
Perfect. Well, thanks again for taking some time to pop on, and thanks everybody for checking out this preview episode for Leafs Bruins Saturday night. TD Garden should be a good one, and I'll be back on Monday for a full recap. So take care of yourselves, everybody. Take care of each other, and we'll talk to you again on Locked On Boston Bruins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your favorite team every single day.